So Nomiki Konst appeared on Fox News, and her appearance is now blowing up and going viral. There's a Mediaite article about this, and people are watching and reacting to it, especially because of a particular exchange that she had with a former Trump promoter. He called her young lady, and her response was perfect. Imagine just for a second that she called him young man. It's unheard of. So obviously there's underlying misogyny there within that comment. It's condescending for him to call her young lady. And that's really what is going viral. But the broader conversation that they were attempting to have, and the point that Nomiki Konst was trying to make, is really, really important. Because, there's this conversation currently about wokeism and, the Democratic Party and their unpopularity. And so this whole idea that the Democratic Party is losing popularity because they're too far left and too woke. Whereas in actuality, the GOP makes this claim, yet they don't actually supplement that claim with an economic agenda themselves. They don't say, all right, well, the Democratic Party, they're pushing CRT, which they're not, but they're doing, woke thing one, woke thing two. Here's what we want to do. They don't say that. So notice when Nomiki Konst really zeroes in on that and explains the failures of the Republican Party and how all of this is a distraction, watch what happens. She gets cut off by the host. Take a look.
The hold Democrats once had on cultural issues is breaking. Hence, why dozens of House Democrats are jumping ship now and retiring before the midterm elections, and why the party's House campaign arm warned its candidates this week that if they don't figure out how to combat the GOP's alarmingly potent culture war attacks, they will lose badly. And as of today, 30 House Democrats are either retiring or seeking a different office. Nomiki.
Well, it's a redistricting year, and so the same thing's happening on the Republican side. That's what happens every redistricting year. But, there was one line there that was very powerful. Combating the Republicans' rhetoric, right? Their attacks. This never let a good crisis go to waste. When Donald Trump was handed the responsibility of really making America the leader in combating COVID, what did he do? He was rallying against the American government and inspiring terrorist attacks on the Capitol.
That's not true.
So you want to talk about
absolutely not true.
Oh, goodness gracious.
All right, I'm going to step in there because you are putting incendiary things into the conversation. And I know that TW wants to rebut that. So quickly, and we'll come right back to you. Hold on, TW?
Yeah, there's no way we're going to sit here and pretend like Donald Trump was promoting terrorism. That you should apologize to American people for saying that. That's just not true. The reality is the reason Democrats are losing is because Joe Biden has told us over and over that the number one problem in America is white supremacy, and it's not. That's not what's facing Americans. The people that are losing their jobs is not because of white supremacy. I'm going to go back to Nomiki now.
I just wanted you to respond on that one point.
Young lady, I live it. I don't have to get paid for it.
Don't call me young lady, sir. I'm a
bless your heart, ma'am.
I'm a grown woman, and you can come up with all the code you want. But the FBI said that the number one problem in America right now is white supremacy, organized white supremacy. That
ask the people who lost their job if it's white supremacy.
Of the Capitol. And so, let's talk about the people who lost their jobs, because Republicans are responsible for tax breaks for the wealthiest. They have no interest in unionized efforts. They're union busters. So if we want to talk about the real issues, you're making all these code words to distract away from the fact that people
are hurting on the ground. Issues.
And Republicans
Let's talk about the real issues.
Nothing to save them.
So I want to jump back in here because the far left agenda in your party, and of course you were a surrogate for Bernie Sanders. So you saw that your party picked more mainstream, so they thought. That's not exactly what they're getting right now, but that's what they thought. So let's just go back to the idea that now your brand, so to speak, is getting voted out potentially. People are saying, no, we're done with this. We want you to focus on inflation and those bigger issues. What do you say about that?
If you look around the country to where the people who are not running for office again or switching districts, they're pretty much in more conservative districts. So those are the centrists of the party. Todd Kaminsky, a senator in New York, just said he was stepping down. Catherine Rice said she was stepping down. Those are the conservative Democrats who realize that working people they don't want business Democrats. They want Democrats who protect unions, organized labor. And all those attacks against the school boards right now, that's an attack against labor.
Harris, you've got to let me respond.
Hold on 1 second. Let me just put one more thing in here. In California, we're looking at erosion of support for Feinstein and Pelosi. Pelosi is not exactly in the middle mainstream right now. She's being pulled a bit to the left in the House by AOC and some of the other so-called squad members. So I hear what you're saying, but that is a cobalt blue state. And one in which progressive politics are very, very hot. I want to get to this. Turns out people in the Golden State, again, which is actually very blue, are souring on President Biden.
That was a train wreck, and I feel so bad for Nomiki for having to put up with that. I don't know how I would have handled that, but I think that she handled it as well as she could have. That was just insanity. So the Fox host there at the end is implying that people are turned off by Joe Biden because he was elected as a mainstream Democrat, i.e. a moderate Democrat, but he got in office and then he went far left at some point. I think that they use far left and woke interchangeably, but he went a little bit too far left and now he's turning people off. But even in a deep blue state like California, where they are very far left and very woke, he's turning them off as well. But wait, if this is your claim, and it's true that people in California are dissatisfied with Biden and Harris, then isn't that kind of defeating your point? Because if this very far left woke state of California is dissatisfied with the supposedly woke far left president, shouldn't they in theory like him? Doesn't this suggest that perhaps you're full of shit when you say that Joe Biden, a right-wing Democrat, is too woke and too far left? I mean, their arguments, you just have to think about it for a little bit. And it's self-defeating. It's self-defeating. Biden is not far left. Perhaps his approval rating is in the toilet because he's too conservative and he isn't fighting for policies a majority of Americans want. Now, at the beginning of that clip there, they talk about a Washington Examiner article where I believe they're citing the DCCC. And the DCCC says that the GOP's culture war argument currently is alarmingly potent and they have to find a way to respond to that. Otherwise, they're going to lose. Now, all you have to do is look to the far left, and we actually know how to respond to the GOP's manufactured culture war issues. Nomiki Konst said it there perfectly. You know, the GOP never lets a good crisis go to waste. They take everything, and they turn it into a culture war issue because that's all that they have, and it's a distraction. And Nomiki was absolutely correct to point that out. I mean, look at CRT, critical race theory. Nobody even knew what this was prior to 2021, but because one savvy GOP operative named Christopher Rufo decided to elevate this issue. Now everyone's talking about it and everyone thinks that CRT is this big thing. Meanwhile, you ask rank and file people what CRT is, they don't fucking know what CRT is. They have no idea what CRT is. What is that, teaching black history? What is CRT? They don't know. So the GOP has been very effective at fear-mongering. They'll take anything. Oh, look at this migrant crisis at the border every election cycle. And as soon as the election is over, you know, all of a sudden, it's not a threat. So the GOP doesn't actually have any issues to appeal to normal working class voters. So the way that they get them to support them, or at least not support Democrats at a minimum, is to scare them. Fear-monger, right? Their working class dog whistles come in the form of xenophobia. See, we care about you, unlike the Democrats, because we don't want these immigrants taking your job. That's the subtext of what they say. You know, we care about you because we don't want, you know, your kids to be taught about history in the United States, because that means that your white kids are going to think that they're guilty of something that they're not guilty of. You know, so you're a normal person. You didn't do slavery. But all of this is a distraction. None of it is actually going to meaningfully improve the lives of the American people. If the GOP got everything that they want with respect to the culture war, and we banned CRT in every single school across the country, we closed the borders indefinitely, the problems that plague our society will still exist. So this is nothing more than a ploy. And Nomiki Konst pointed that out. But when she pointed that out, well, that's when the Fox News host cut her out. Now, before we talk about what Nomiki Konst said, that guy said, Joe Biden has told us over and over that the number one problem in America is white supremacy. He then says that people are losing their job. It's not because of white supremacy. So him right there, he's signaling to working class people, hey, the Democratic Party isn't serious. The Republican Party acknowledges you. So then the logical follow-up is, okay, what policies in particular is the Republican Party promoting to help working class people? Now, that's not to say that the Democratic Party is great as well, hence why the far left in America was pushing back against Biden in favor of someone like Bernie Sanders. But what Nomiki Konst there said was perfect. And maybe you didn't hear all of it because she was cut off, but let me read it to you. So she said, let's talk about people who lost their jobs because Republicans are responsible for tax breaks for the wealthiest. They have no interest in unionized efforts. Absolutely true. They're union busters. Absolutely true. That's what these right-to-work laws are. They're anti-labor. So if we want to talk about the real issues, you're making all these code words to distract away from the fact that people are hurting on the ground and Republicans are doing nothing to save them. Bingo. That right there is why Nomiki Konst was cut off. Because she just exposed the entire agenda of Fox News and the Republican Party currently. Fox News doesn't give a flying fuck about working class people. They're not going to propose greater unionization. They're not going to support their own version of the PRO Act. So all that they do is distract you. What's that? The minimum wage hasn't increased in over a decade and we don't support that? Look at CRT. Look at, they're canceling Cat in the Hat now. Mr. Potato Head is gender neutral. Oh my God, the M&Ms aren't sexy anymore. Oh my God, the Super Bowl's too sexy. I mean, it's all bullshit. It's all a distraction. It's all a ruse. And Nomiki Konst just exposed that. Flawlessly, effortlessly so. She did fantastic here, given how hostile that territory was. She walked into the lines then, and still, she got them to essentially tacitly admit that she's correct because they wouldn't have cut her off if she wasn't making such a good point. But that is the GOP's project currently. Distract, distract, distract. Republicans don't care about working class people. They care about delivering for their donors. As corporatist as the Democratic Party is, as corrupt as they are, Republicans are exponentially more corporatist and corrupt. What underlying issues that plague our system are Republicans proposing that we address? Jack fucking shit. So going back to the DCCC's comment about the GOP, and their culture war being alarmingly potent, how would you respond to that? That's the overall attempt to, or question that they're attempting to answer in this particular segment. And it's pretty simple. You deliver for people. You deliver for people. Let me tell you this. I think that the GOP culture war would not be as potent as it is currently. And it is potent, but it wouldn't be as persuasive to normal Americans if Democrats actually delivered. There's a poll that was released that 83% of Democrats, and I believe a majority of voters overall, support student debt cancellation. Can you imagine if Biden, he took, a cannabis off Schedule 1, he canceled student debt. He did everything in his power to fight and push through a populist agenda. If he actually got Build Back Better passed, the things that Fox News said, the culture war issues, the CRT issues wouldn't matter, because when people feel as if you're making a concrete difference in their lives with your policies, they don't care about these other things. They're less persuaded by bullshit like Cat in the Hat and Mr. Potato Head and cancel culture. So when they look at corporate Democrats like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, they can't say that Americans are dissatisfied with them because they're out-of-touch elites and they're too corporate, because the same can be said for Republicans, albeit probably to a worse extent. Republicans are more out of touch and more elite. So what do they say instead of just telling the truth? Oh, well, Nancy Pelosi is being pulled to the left by people like AOC. Really? How so? Because AOC is trying to force her hand on a stock ban for members of Congress. That's pulling her to the left. Is that not just a bipartisan issue? I mean, there are Republicans who support it. There's a surprising number of bipartisan people. So on the one issue where AOC is actually persuasive and forcing Nancy Pelosi's hand, there's a lot of GOP support. So are they getting pulled to the left as well? See, they use Democrats being too far left in lieu of their corporatism. They don't say this about Republicans. They can't say, oh, well, these Republicans like Mitch McConnell, he is disliked by the American people because he's too far left, because that's preposterous. But they say it for Democrats because they know that their audience will believe it. But if Democrats actually got their heads out of their asses, and I'm talking about the far left Democrats they're referring to, the mainstream Democrats like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, and they actually delivered, if people felt the changes that they instituted via policy, if they actually felt as if things were getting better in this country and not worse, all of these arguments wouldn't be persuasive.
I'm gonna come.
Do not come.
Come.
Come. Come. Come. Come. Come.